episode of the Loose Cannons podcast. I am your lovely host, Sammer, and I'm joined with my boys, Stank and Chicken Breast. And we are also hanging out with, I'm probably going to butcher your last name, from the Locked On Patriots podcast, Michael Diabase?
Well, almost, but the exception of the S, it's Diabate, actually. But that's
Diabate,
right.
That's right.
No good. No,
I was going to say, if it's Diabase, we just call him the boss.
The boss.
The boss.
I kind of like that. That's pretty good,
All
guys.
right. He's going by the boss.
I'm tempted to use that.
That works for me.
I think Springsteen might have something to say about that, but you know what? I'll write it as long as I can.
Mike, I don't know if you've been keeping up with the former quarterback of the team that you love as much as we love the Bucs, but Tom Brady's been he's gotten in some trouble since we talked to you last, and he's had a press conference or two, and he's also kind of not listened to the rules as it relates to the COVID stuff and all this. So we're excited to have you on here because we have questions to ask and see if there's any in between the lines or anything like that Tom's kind of just utilizing when he speaks to the media in terms of sending messages to his teammates, messages to anybody really. And one of those things that came out was last week he talked to the media about this time being the first time he's actually been on a new team and having to learn a new offense. And one of the things that stuck out to me from that was that he said this has kind of been a challenge in the sense that he's never had to do this before, and that learning all the verbiage is actually been something that he's had to really work at. And from what you know about Tom, does that surprise you, or is that part of that work ethic that we get from Tom, and it's just another one of his Tomisms?
I mean, it honestly doesn't surprise me all that much. In covering Tom for the past few years, this is a guy that comes in, always knows exactly what's required of him. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's not a learning curve. Tom is always one of those guys that's consistently learning. One of the things I talked about, and I believe I talked about it the last time I joined you guys here on the pod, was he furiously took notes all the time, whenever he was in meeting rooms, whenever he was, listening to Bill Belichick lectures, or they were going over plays or anything like that. Tom Brady would fill notebooks when his teammates would be filling maybe a half a page on notes. He just kept doing and going when it came to that. So this is a guy that's always looking to learn. You're taking him out of a system that he's known for 20 years and putting him into a new environment. Now, guaranteed, I know that Bruce Arians and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to look to utilize Tom's strengths. They're going to adjust a little bit, but Tom is the one that has the learning curve here. He's got to come in and endear himself to his new teammates. So by him coming in and saying that this is something he hasn't had a chance to do before, that there is a learning curve, that he's struggling. I don't want to say struggling because he hasn't used that term, but it's a challenge for him to keep up. It's something that he's looking forward to, and it's something that he's embracing. But it doesn't surprise me to hear that, because he's always looking for that next challenge. He's always looking for that new opportunity. When it comes to some of the things that he said around COVID and whatnot, look, bottom line, guys, this is someone who chooses his words very carefully. Tom Brady doesn't speak haphazardly. He's not rehearsed. It's not a situation where he's in the mirror looking at what he's going to say the next day or scripting out what he wants to say to the press. But if it comes out of Tom's mouth, it's usually very calculated, something that he's thought about previously and that he'll go out and say again. So, look, the bottom line is nothing that he says or really does will surprise me, simply because I believe it's just his way of doing his best to get ready for the action on the field. That's really what Tom Brady's all about. It's what he's been all about since he was drafted here in New England and then ended up coming down to Tampa. I think the Buccaneers fans are going to see that this year. This is a guy who takes everything he does very seriously, and he usually translates success on the field.
Yeah, but Mike, you covered this guy for a long time, Mike. He's a bit of a troll too. For him to come out and say, it's been difficult, having to learn the new verbiage and learn the new offense, and then literally 3 days later, Rojo, or as our beautiful quarterback would say, Ron Jones, steps to the podium and says, they ask him, hey, so Brady said that he's having, it's difficult. It's difficult picking up this new offense, 19 years not having to pick it up. Have you seen anything out there where he's had some difficulty picking it up, et cetera, et cetera? And, Ron Jones' response was, well, if if he's having difficulty, he could have fooled me because he's got it down pat. So is he trolling? Because he can be kind of a troll. Is he just, is he switching bait? And what's going on? What's going on, Mike?
That's a good point. And again, look, there's nothing that Tom Brady has not seen or done on a football field, folks, with the exception of, like rip off a 20, 30-yard run. He's not a guy that's going to do that. But in terms of looks, in terms of schemes, anything to that effect, there's going to be a learning curve, but there's also not a whole lot that's going to fool him. So, again, I think it comes back to my point of him being someone who chooses his words very carefully. He's looking to endear himself to his new teammates. He wants to make sure that he's giving due diligence not only to the press, he's giving due diligence to his teammates and letting them know that he's doing his best to assimilate. But Tom Brady is someone that's a quick study, and I believe that he is ahead of the curve when it comes to the learning curve. There is a level of learning that he's doing in Tampa Bay, and I think some of that is, very genuine. But yeah, there's probably a little bit of posturing going on as well. I don't believe he's sending a message to anyone. I know that has come up several times, but I also do believe that, that's part of who Tom Brady is. He's very, very good at selling his brand. He has been, for the better part of the last few years since the creation of TB12, and really since Tom Brady has become the entity in addition to becoming the football player. It's part of the game, guys. And for a guy at his level, for a superstar like Tom, it doesn't surprise me that he would be saying things that make for good copy and make for good sound bites.
Mike, I've floated out really in fun, Brady's search to always chase the edge. Having a guy like Guerrero in his camp, somebody who has a kind of a shady background, but still, keeping him close at all times. He brought him down here to Tampa. It's basically like his male wife. A guy who's always looking to get that edge and practice when he's not necessarily supposed to be practicing. Do you think that Alex and Tom have some type of COVID contingency in place? Well, you know what? I'm just gonna come out and say it. I floated out that maybe he's already maybe Alex and Tom have all right. Maybe Tom already has COVID or has had COVID. Under the care of Alex Guerrero, because he just seems to be coming in full of confidence. He's practicing out there. Helicopters are following him at high school games. The guy just has no fear, it seems, when it comes to COVID. Would you put it past Alex Guerrero and Tom to put, maybe purposely get it so he doesn't have to deal with it during the season? That's my question. Man, I was dancing this question.
Guys, look, bottom line is for a disease like this or an affliction like COVID-19, there's no known vaccine. There's no known cure. There is no guarantee that once you get it, that you can't get it again. It's not like chickenpox, at least according to the scientific research I've seen. It's not a situation where, you get it and then you develop an immunity to it and you're fine. There have been several cases where people have had it and then contracted it again. So I don't necessarily, buy into a lot of the Alex Guerrero kind of hoodoo, voodoo type stuff that goes on with TB12. I've never been a big proponent of all that. I know that some of it is documented in terms of things that he's been attached to or things that he's, signed his name to when it comes to either, cures for diseases or things of that nature. That's a little bit above my pay grade, so I don't really go into the details surrounding that. I can tell you about Tom, that Tom takes things very seriously, but Tom is also the type of guy that is very much without fear when it comes to things like that. If he is locked in and he's narrow-minded in his focus, then to me, I think that really says a lot about why he may not have the fear that some have. Look, bottom line, there are people all over the country. There are some that believe that wearing a mask and taking precautions, social distancing, doing all these things is exactly what you should be doing to prevent this disease. I'm one of those people. But there are a lot of people out there that believe that wearing a mask and doing all these social distancing things are not really helping the curve. So which type of person is Tom Brady? I'm not at liberty to say. I don't know Tom that well in order to say, well, oh, this is political, this is that. It's certainly not beyond the realm of possibility for any one of those to come into effect. But I think the lack of fear that he shows when it comes to something like COVID or getting injured or whatnot is simply Tom's confidence in himself, in the job that he does taking care of himself, and the regimen that he has to keep himself healthy. I think that's where Tom's confidence comes from, not necessarily from anything that Alex is pushing or from either a lack of desire to give in to COVID. I think it's just more he feels that he prepares himself well, he keeps himself healthy, and based on that he can pretty much weather any storm. So, I'm sure you'll see him take the precautions necessary as directed by the league. But at the same time, Tom's going to be confident in his own ability. We've seen him do it up here in New England, not when it comes to COVID, but when it comes to injury and things of that nature. He really believes in the regimen that he has, and it's hard to argue with the results right now.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was leaning towards when he floated that stupid idea that Guerrero gave Tom the virus on purpose. I was thinking, man, the guy eats avocados in every way possible. I'm just thinking he just knows his immune system is just strong, so he kind of just throws caution to the wind. But this past week, a couple teammates came out and spoke about Tom as a teammate, and there's video of him kind of being the rah-rah teammate. And a lot of us have kind of compared him to Michael Jordan in the sense that there's so much focus that you don't necessarily think that they're out there having fun, or at least being, the fun guy, the guy who's joking on the field. And then we also talked to, Tom's new center, Ryan Jensen, a couple weeks ago, and he spoke to the fact that Tom just seemed like a normal guy. He wasn't this, this god amongst men. He didn't feel like he was, among this legend. He just felt like he was hanging out with another guy. And that kind of leads me to the next question. Is that something that's always been Tom's approach, or is this sort of like what happened with Kobe, where he got a little bit older and he started to kind of loosen up a little bit and try to, become maybe more friendly with the younger teammates? And has some of that kind of just been something that he's learned along the way, or has Tom really been that way, but we haven't really seen that much of it because of, the let's fucking go and the focus and the drive that we always hear about seems to maybe overshadow that?
No, I can tell you that was Tom's MO since the day he stepped foot on a football field here in New England. He's always been that guy, down to earth. When it comes to teammates, Tom has never had the feeling that he's better than any individual, that he's more important than any individual. And his teammates bear that out. The one thing that you will consistently hear from almost every teammate that he's ever had here in New England is how humble Tom Brady was, how much they loved coming to New England to play with Tom Brady. He would go up to guys in the locker room after they were signed or traded for by the Patriots, shake people's hand and say, "Hi, I'm Tom. I'm the quarterback. I want to, it's nice to meet you. Glad you're here." And he would legitimately mean that. That wasn't just lip service. That's just simply just how he saw himself. So it doesn't surprise me that he's endearing himself to his new teammates in Tampa Bay. He's a very humble guy when it comes to those measures. He really is humbled by the company he keeps in the locker room. And he knows that locker room is filled with a lot of stars in its own right. Look, Tom Brady is not coming in here to a JV high school team that's going to be just completely in awe of him. Yeah, there are going to be teammates and players that he's never played with that are going to say, "Wow, I'm sharing a locker room with Tom Brady." But guys like Mike Evans, guys like Chris Godwin, Rob Gronkowski, obviously was his teammate in New England for a number of years. Those guys right off the bat are going to command the respect of a guy like Tom coming in, who know, especially in guys like Evans and Godwin, who have been there for, a while. That's their team. He's coming in as the new guy. So it wouldn't even be surprising to me to find out that he might be even more contrite and maybe even a bit more deferent to his teammates because of the level of respect that he has for them. But in terms of guys looking at him and saying, "Wow, he doesn't feel like he's above anything," no, that's nothing new for Tom. That's just the way he's always been. And really, I think it's the way he's always going to be. It's just in his nature.
So Bruce came out and said he was most impressed with the fact that Tom seems to want to win every single rep. I think, that's kind of refreshing because I've been to plenty of practices and while, previous quarterbacks and previous head coaches here, run tight ships. In practice at times, look sloppy. Me and Poppy Latte are talking about it before. You go to a training camp practice and you might see 4 or 5 picks.
He's just testing waters. He's just seeing what he can get away with.
Right.
That's it.
Brady doesn't seem that type. I think, obviously we personally haven't seen him practice out there, but what Arians is saying, the guy hates to lose a single rep in practice. You've clearly been around him during some training camps. What's your take on Brady in his practice game, during training camp, that kind of thing?
Just as intense on the practice field as he is on the football field. Tom Brady wants to win. He wants to perform at the highest level he possibly can. You mentioned Kobe earlier and Jordan. He's in that mode, guys. He's in that mode of saying, every time I hit the field, I want to make sure that I'm being the best Tom Brady that I possibly can be. He's going to continue to do that in Tampa Bay. I watched him do it for 3 years here in New England covering him. I watched him do it for 20 as a fan of the Patriots, just watching him take the field each and every day and wanting to be perfect on each and every play. Now, is Tom a realist and realize that's not going to happen? Absolutely. He's going to take those miscues and he's going to turn them into something positive, but he's intense and he is competitive. He will get on his teammates for as much respect as he has for them, as I said in the previous question, and as much deference he has to wanting to be a part of a great team and the respect that he has for his teammates. He's going to demand the highest level of competition from everybody on his team, because that's what Tom Brady's going to do. He's going to give more than 100% every time he's out there on the field. He's going to expect that from his teammates. So the one good thing that I will say about someone like that is that Tom commands that respect by giving the respect. And that's something that I think so many players that are in his position don't really do all that well, or don't really do to the degree that a guy like Tom Brady does. The great ones have that type of respect, and that's why Tom is arguably one of the greatest to ever put on shoulder pads.
So, Mike, lots of Tom, and we get it, right? We're eager, we're excited. It's the fucking GOAT, right? But you covered more people in New England than just Tom. What are we getting in Gronkowski? Is Gronkowski the Pippen to Jordan? Is he the Shaq to Kobe? What are we getting in Gronk as far as energy on the field, leadership? We know he's special. You think what's left in the tank? What are we getting on Gronkowski?
Well, in order for Rob to take a year off and come back to football tells me that there's still stuff that he feels he has to prove. Rob Gronkowski has a lot of options in terms of what he's been able to do. If he's choosing to go back onto a football field, where I've seen him take some very difficult hits and really, put his body through an awful lot, then to me that says that he's locked in, he's motivated. Gronk is one of the best teammates that guys that I've spoken to that are close to the team, that have been his teammates, have ever had. Rob is supportive. He's lighthearted when it comes to his attitude in the locker room, but he is intense and very calculated, and he's a very smart guy. A lot of people don't give him credit for that. They look at the frat boy mentality and they see him partying and dancing and doing all this, and they assume that, he's like an extra from the cast of Animal House. Rob is not like that. He's very calculated in what he does. He's very aware of his brand, but he's also a very smart football player. Bill Belichick called him one of the smarter football players he's ever coached. Coming from a guy like Bill Belichick, that's a hell of a compliment. He doesn't throw that out there that often. Gronk is going to give you a lot on the field. He's going to know exactly where he needs to be. He'll be able to get you the yardage that you need. He's a very good blocker. Something, again, that I don't think he gets enough credit for. People look at the touchdowns and they look at the prolific ability he has to be a receiver, but Gronk can win you games without even seeing the football, and he's done that so often in New England. I look for that to continue in Tampa Bay.
Well, you look at the Chargers game a couple years ago, right, where the Chargers went to that small defense and they were wreaking havoc on everyone, and New England came in and said, you know what, fine, we're going to run the ball 50 times a game, and Gronk turned into an extra tackle and they just literally bullied them around because of Gronk. He was the
absolutely, without question. Without Gronk, they don't win that game. And I was there at that Chargers game, and looking at that and seeing, and in the press box and seeing everyone say, "Wow, I can't believe that Rob is almost a non-factor when it comes to the stat sheet." But he was just racking up if football had assists, as part of their stat tracking like they do in basketball, he would be racking up those assists like you wouldn't believe, especially in that game, just looking to see what he was able to do. Again, I do look for him to play that type of role this year because, again, he doesn't have to be the main focus at tight end. O.J. Howard is there. Cameron Brate is there. You guys have some adept tight ends that are capable of shouldering the load. I look for Rob to get the lion's share because of his synergy with Brady, but he doesn't have to be the only option. And for a while in New England, he was, especially after the Aaron Hernandez fiasco and the way that ended. Rob was always shouldering the load at tight end, maybe a little bit more than he should have. He's not going to have that problem this year. He's going to have some guys that can help him out. So, yeah, in terms of what you're getting in Gronk, I'd say almost as glowing, if not just as glowing things about him as I will about Tom.
So, Mike, speaking on that, one more, Sam, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I'll finish.
Speaking on that, is Rob going to be able to extract what coaches have been trying to extract the last 4 years out of O.J. Howard? Like, is that leadership by example, what keeping it lighthearted, but also like that fierce competitiveness? Because OJ's built he's built like Gronk. It's insane, but we can't. Is he going to be able to get it out of him as a teammate instead of your teacher? When your teacher tells you something, it's something. But when your teammate or your somebody that's in the trenches with you tells you or shows you by example, it's a little different.
Well, sometimes the best way to lead is to lead by example, and I think Rob is going to do that, especially with a guy like Howard, who may not have had the opportunity to be the leader or maybe even the example that needed to be set in order to do that. Rob can be a mentor to these younger players, and not just on the tight end squad either. He's going to mentor a lot of these guys on the offensive line, some of the young players that they have at the receiver position. Rob is a really good guy to be able to look to. He's been there. He's done that. He's seen it all pretty much. And if they are a little bit they shouldn't be, but if some of them are a little squeamish to try to look to Tom for that type of leadership, I do believe that they'll look to Rob, and Rob will be someone that's very forthright and very willing to help out. So, yeah, I think he could work wonders for O.J. Howard and his ability to have that leadership by example, maybe add another dimension to his game, his overall game, not just on the field, but the mental aspect of it as well.
Yeah, Mike, I was going to go into it a little bit about we kind of touched a little bit on the Bucs starting running back being Ronald Jones, but most recently they signed LeSean McCoy. Now, you've been around Tom and you've been around the Patriots, and you know what Tom likes to do as it relates to running backs, and you've seen him take running backs who are either over the hill, maybe past their prime, or just not stars in the NFL, and made them more than serviceable, and has affected their payday even to an extent. How important was it for the Bucs to bring in a guy like LeSean, even though they do have, I think they have a good stable of running backs right now if you count on, the rookie Keyshawn Vaughn. But how important was it to have a guy like LeSean McCoy come in, both for Tom and just in general, just for what Tom likes to do with his running backs when he's spreading the ball around and he's utilizing more than just one guy?
I think it was important. I don't necessarily know if it was vital because I agree with you, Samar. I think that there is a pretty good stable of running backs. I like Keyshawn Vaughn. I think that that's a good addition that they made throughout the draft. And obviously, Ronald Jones is someone that's a capable runner, but LeSean McCoy adds a level of experience. He adds a level of familiarity with Tom Brady. Don't forget, played in Buffalo, and you pick up a lot when two teams play each other as often as the Buffalo Bills and the New England Patriots do. You could see right off the bat that these two guys were happy to be each other's teammates. And the thing that I like about LeSean's game is he's very adept at catching the ball out of the backfield. We've seen Tom Brady utilize running backs like that all of his career, whether you go back to the early days of the Patriots dynasty and a running back like Kevin Falk, who was so good at being able to do that. James White came in and really picked up that mantra from him, and Brady's used him so well over the past few years. I think he could use LeSean McCoy in the same vein and still be able to have him as a threat to run and also be able to catch passes out of the backfield. So I like the addition. I think it shores up the running game when you have a quarterback that is aging. And let's face it, I think the guy is drinking from the fountain of youth. I swear he is. But when it comes to his age, that you have to factor that in. And sooner or later, later, that is going to become a factor, whether it's this year, next year, or even beyond. Who knows at this point with Tom? I do think that it's smart to have a good stable of runners. So adding someone with McCoy's experience and adding someone with the talent he still has is a very, very smart move. And it only makes that offense even more formidable.
Mike, Tom's been known to fall in love with his slot receivers and create stars out of little, quick, Caucasian men. Bucs have a guy here named Scotty Miller. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but if you're not, you will be.
You will be.
What do you think the chances of a guy like Scotty just coming out of nowhere and Brady just falling in love with him, making him the number one receiver on this team? Do you think that's possible, that he surpasses somebody like Evans or Godwin because Tom loves just throwing it to those little guys?
Well, I am familiar with Miller, and one of the first things that I thought of when I looked at Tom's fit down in Tampa Bay is who was going to be that slot receiver that could emerge. One thing I will tell you about Tom is I think a lot is made of that Welker, Edelman, Amendola type, that type of mold. I think a lot is made of that. Those were the weapons that Tom essentially had here in New England, but he was very adept at being able to use guys to his advantage and really get the most out of them. If you look at the early days of the Patriots dynasty, he had a very good synergy with wide receivers like David Givens or even David Patton in the early days. Troy Brown was one of his favorite, slot receivers, and he was a guy that could really do something special. I think we all saw in awe what Tom Brady and Randy Moss could do together on the football field. To me, that is still the most magical pairing I've seen in 2007 for a quarterback and a wide receiver to this day. And I think that is something that really should be, always revered amongst Patriots fans. Even though that season didn't quite end the way we wanted it to, it still was a thing of beauty to watch those two guys at their peak go, further than any quarterback and wide receiver combination had gone at that time. But when it comes to either the slot or when it comes to even the X or the Z receivers that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to employ, Tom's favorite target is going to be the open one. If it's a guy like Miller or Edmonds or even a guy like Evans or someone you mentioned Chris Godwin, he's going to utilize the open receivers as much as he can. So much of the New England offense was predicated on short intermediate passes, getting in the middle of the field and moving the ball down the field. Those were the strengths of the New England Patriots weapons around Tom. So a lot of what they did offensively was tailor-made for that. Tampa Bay has wide open options. Tom has a lot more options this year than he's had in quite some time. He's got potent outside wide receivers. He's got great help in the slot. Adept tight ends that can catch the ball. He's got running backs now that can catch the ball out of the backfield or extend plays, with short intermediate burst runs. Because he's got all of those weapons around him, I look for him to utilize them all. So I don't think you're going to see Tom Brady fall in love with that slot receiver this year. He'll utilize it, but I think because he has so many other options, I think you're going to see him utilize the deep ball a little bit more than he has. And dare I say, a lot of the critics of Tom Brady that think he's simply just a dink and dunk quarterback are going to see that this guy can still throw the ball and he can still sling it pretty well for an old man.
Did he come to the line of scrimmage a lot of times? Was he? I was finish up what I was going to say. Did Tom audible a lot? Did he come to the line of scrimmage a lot and change plays? Was that part of what he did in that system, or was he kind of a guy who went with what was called?
He called a lot of them at the line of scrimmage. To be total with you, a lot of times he'd call the spots for the offensive line. So he's very adept at being able to do that. He can make those calls. In speaking to some of the offensive linemen that he's played with, guys like Russ Hochstein, guys like Matt Light, someone like Dan Copen, who were his centers and his guards for a number of years, said that Tom was really the field general when it came to the offensive line. He knew he could see plays. He made the calls at the line of scrimmage and was able to really identify. Matt Light once told me Tom knew what the other team was going to do before they knew what they were going to do themselves. And this is going back a ways. Matt's been retired for quite a number of years. So for him to say something like that at such an early age gives you a little indication as to the fact that Tom Brady has pretty much seen it all, done it all, and he can recognize it and pick it up pretty quick.
Mike with a Russ Hotstein reference, former Buccaneer great, by the way.
Love it. I gotta ask, Mike. I gotta ask, bro. Listen, we've had some heavy hitters on here, man. We've had Casey Phillips on, we've had Carmen Vitale on, we've had several Bucs insiders on, and nobody can answer this question because of COVID. Nobody can get near the guy.
Oh yeah.
What's his scent, Mike? Is it a beechwood? Is it avocado? Is it like powder fresh? Like what's the aura, the scent of Brady? I keep asking on Twitter. Nobody can answer this question for me. Please.
What does he smell like, Mike?
What's he smell like, man?
You know what he smells like, gentlemen? Winning. Super Bowl championships. Yes. Lombardi Trophy silver. That's what the man smells like. That is his essence. And, if the Patriots can't hoist another trophy this year, then I hope you all down in Tampa Bay get a chance to taste that once again, because I'll always be indebted and always be grateful to all the stuff that Tom gave us here the last 20 years. Getting a chance to cover him was a dream come true, and getting a chance to watch him for the past 20 years as a fan was truly amazing. So, yeah, I think I'm going to stick with that. I think that's a good soundbite. That's what he smells like, folks. Winning and Lombardi Trophy silver.
I love
so
it.
Next time we have you on, we're gonna want to know what Cam Newton smells like. I'm thinking he smells like my grandmother, but I'm not really sure. You need to find out for us.
Well, I'm in the same boat as those Bucs insiders that can't get close to Brady right now. We're not allowed up there in Gillette just yet, but hopefully at some point we'll be able to get up there, and I'll try to report back to you guys. You guys will be the first to know.
Mike, you can have Cam.
I kind of already know the answer, honestly, but I'm not going to say
Mike,
it on here.
You're breaking news right here on Loose Cannons, then, Mike, right? Because you just said, hopefully you guys can win the Super Bowl. So you're saying that Bill Belichick is going to convince Cam to dive on a fumble? I'm just asking for a friend. I'm just asking for a friend.
Well, you know what, guys? From everything that I've heard, Bill is highly motivated. Cam is highly motivated. Those two things coming together in New England this year could lead to some success. So we'll continue to monitor. We'll continue to see what happens throughout the year. But right now, expectations are higher right now than they were the last time I spoke with you guys here in New England anyway. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Mike, we have, like Christian said, we've had some really heavy hitter guests on here, and we've done our best to have fun. We've also made sure that we always ask the things that matter. And one of those things there's two things actually, and they surround our favorite foods. On this podcast, our favorite food is wings. I mean, there's nobody competes with that. There's nothing better. I don't care if you say pizza or lasagna or tacos. It's all second place.
Tacos? What are you, crazy?
Dude, fucking Stephen Beck. He thinks tacos are better than wings, guys. Whatever, man. Fuck that guy.
No pressure, Mike. No pressure.
Yeah, so, Mike, I gotta ask you, man. We gotta ask you, and our fans. This is a very big. This is very important. This is like the cornerstone. One of the four cornerstones of our show is when you have your wings. I'm sure you like dry rub, and I'm sure you like wet sauced wings. But if you had a choice, are you going wet? Or are you going dry?
Ooh, that's tough. That's tough. That's like asking someone to choose between their children. I mean, that I'm a big fan of wings, so I mean, I'm a big fan of the dry rub. I think the sauced buffalo wings are probably always be my favorites. It's just just a sentimental feeling, and I've always been a big fan of buffalo wings. So. Yeah, back to the wall. Those are probably going to be my choice, but a lot of love for the dry rub. It's not as cut and dry as it seems. That would be a really, really tough one for me. But again, back to the wall, forcing me to choose. I'm going to go with sauce buffalo.
All right,
here's the heavy hitter one. This is no joke.
Christian, you ask him this one. You got to ask this one, man.
There's pressure on this one, Mike.
Yeah, this one's really important. Mike.
This shows the sophistication of your palate. Mm-hmm. If you're having those sauced, beautiful wings.
If you answer this wrong, you're never coming back on here again.
I was about to say that.
Mike, you're having those beautiful sauced wings. Well done, by the way, because you got to have them crispy, right?
Of course.
You have to have them crispy. Nobody likes soggy. Ugh. Are you dipping them in blue cheese or ranch?
Oh, okay. All right. Yep. Well, I'm going to show my Northeast bias over here. I'm a blue cheese guy. So
we love you, Mike.
Welcome
to the family, Mikey.
So,
that's it, Mike. You're in.
You're
a
in.
Northeast bias right here. That's anywhere in the New England area, upstate New York, especially into Buffalo itself. That's pretty much blue cheese territory.
Would you call it that's the blue cheese belt?
I would say that's the blue cheese belt. Yeah, I think so. I think I'm going to have to go along with that, guys.
So wait, Mike, you just broke more news on our show here. So what you're saying is where buffalo wings came from, Buffalo, it's blue cheese. It's blue cheese. If you pull out ranch in Buffalo, you're getting dirty looks, right?
Well, everybody that I've talked to that's a Buffalo native has done the blue cheese over the ranch dressing. So, I mean, I take that for what you will. I'm not going to be the official Buffalo spokesperson here, but everybody that I've spoken to from Buffalo has been more of a fan of the blue cheese as opposed to the ranch. So that's the way. That's my story. I'm sticking to it, and I guess whatever. Let the repercussions go where they may. But I'm sure there were ranch guys in Buffalo
Would you say
as well, or
blue
ranch guys
cheese?
and gals.
Blue cheese is the sauce, like Brady is. Okay. I lost it.
Where'd you go with that, bro?
I had it in my brain.
I think he was trying to ask. Yeah, I think he was trying to ask if Tom is the buffalo wing sauce, then would Rob be the blue cheese to that? And yeah, my answer is yes. I like that analogy. I think
that wasn't what I was going to say, but I'm going to take it because obviously my brain does not work too well.
By the way, Mike and Sam, excuse me 1 second, just the 5-second rank. That goes out to all you fucking ranch people. So fuck you, okay?
Fuck you, ranchers.
Fucking guys that give me shit on Twitter.
Yeah, Mike. We have
blue cheese.
We have a friend of the show, Mike. He works for the Draft Network. We've always considered him to have a great palate as it relates to food. I mean,
elite.
He's like at the top of the list, man. And then
you might know him.
A few weeks ago, I don't want to drop names. His last name rhymes with Kikama.
Kikama.
Yeah. First name,
Bravis. That's
Brever.
Yep.
Yeah. But this is the thing. A few weeks ago, we found out. A few weeks ago,
3 sides minimum. 3 sides minimum.
A few weeks ago, we find out that this guy's been dipping his fucking wings in ranch this whole time, and it just changed our entire scope and our view. Everything about him is completely changed. And to be honest with you, man, since he left the Tampa Bay area and is now covering the enemy Carolina Panthers, everything has worked out for the Bucs. Everything. So this whole time we thought the curse was from Matt Bryant or possibly from the Monday Night Football collapse against Peyton Manning and the Colts. This entire time, it wasn't any of that. It was Brever Hickama and his fucking ranch. I mean,
dipping his wings in ranch.
And what you just told us about blue cheese, it brought a tear to my eye. I mean, I was about to just start sobbing right here on the show, man. It was so. I mean, I was patting my heart. It was just right there, man. It's beautiful. And now you're welcome to the show at any moment. You just send me a DM. You're on the show because you know how wings should be done. And
Mike. Listen, you got to make your way down to. I know you're a big Pats fan, but you're obviously a big Brady fan. If you come down to Tampa to see Brady, you're welcome at any of our tailgate parties, any of our home watch parties, only because you like blue cheese.
Like, listen,
well, gentlemen, I cannot tell you what that means to me, gents. I appreciate that, and I will take you up on it.
We hate Cam Newton, so I'm not wishing you guys. I appreciate you wishing us success, but we literally hate Cam Newton. You can understand why. But
Tampa,
if you guys don't make the
playoffs, I can understand it.
If you don't make the playoffs and you have some free time, make your way on down here, man. Get some blue cheese and some fucking wheat. All right, it's beautiful. Beautiful in January over here. Great.
Like I said, again, I will take you up on that, gents.
Mike, I'm gonna have to bring this back to football. I have a quick little question now. I don't know how familiar you are with the Bucs roster, but is there anybody on this team that, just knowing Tom and knowing Rob Gronkowski and what those guys are going to bring to this squad, is there anybody that's kind of flying under the radar for our team that is just going to surprise us because of the addition of maybe Gronk or Tom?
Somebody on the Tampa Bay roster that's going to benefit most from having Tom Brady on the field. Is that what it broke up a little bit? So I apologize, guys.
That was the question.
I was asking, is there anybody who's flying under the radar for the Bucs right now on this roster that is just going to be one of those surprise, we didn't see it coming type of moments because of maybe Tom or Gronk.
Scotty Miller.
Yeah, I would actually say I really do believe that if there is a guy that's flying under the radar right now, it could be Miller, because he does have similar skill sets to some of the receivers that Tom has utilized before. And again, I stand by my response earlier when I say that Tom is going to utilize this core to the best of its ability. And I think you're going to see a lot more deep balls. I think you're going to see a lot more intermediate routes. But in terms of that short passing game, this is a guy that really could end up being someone that emerges from, I don't want to say obscurity, because obviously Tampa fans know exactly who he is. But at the same time, it's going to be someone that may come to the national consciousness because of a guy like Tom Brady. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Miller. I think that that's probably the guy right now that stands to benefit the most from having somebody like Tom Brady around. He can utilize receivers like that to the best of his ability.
And listen, Mike, he's not your one trick, slot receiver pony. Can only do that. He got 4.2 speed now. You're saying he's going to throw it deep with his other weapons. He can throw it deep to Miller too. I'm telling you,
absolutely,
receivers.
Yeah, people don't give credit where credit is due to guys like Amendola and Edelman that most people think are slot creations. These guys both lined up on the outside quite often. They've played on the outside. So Tom is not just going to look for Miller in the slot. He's going to look for them on the outside as well. They're going to be a jack of all trades type receiving core. Could see him in a number of areas be able to utilize that pretty well.
It's scary, Mike, when you think about it. It really is. It really is. When you look at a receiving core and what you've seen Tom do over the years, I mean, it's pretty ridiculous. It is pretty Madden-esque to have Mike Evans, Godwin, Scotty Miller, Gronkowski, O.J. Howard, LeSean McCoy. That's insane. Like, if you go into what my colleague here, Sammer, would say, and he loves to bang that drum, no pun intended. If you go into 12, how do you stop that, Mike? If you have Gronkowski and O.J. on the field at the same time, Godwin and Scotty Miller, or Godwin and Evans, and LeSean McCoy in the backfield, how do you stop? You want to go heavy? We're going to throw it. You want to go light? We're going to run it down your – like, how do you –
Pressure. Pressure is the only way. Our O-line, they better hold up.
Mike, you there?
Better do their part.
Yeah, absolutely. I think right now, what's going to happen is depending on how much time that Tom has to be able to throw the ball, that's why I think Tampa Bay's offensive line is going to benefit the most from having Tom Brady around, because he can mask a lot of difficulties that are by the O-line. I've seen him do it here in New England several times where the O-line wasn't quite up to the challenge, and Tom Brady's ability to get
since Brady came there, he's left there. People are playing it up even more. What's your take on his arm strength?
I don't think his arm strength has diminished. I mean, look, anytime a guy turns 43 years old, he's not going to have quite the same zip on the ball that he had 10 years ago, even 20 years ago. That's amazing that we're talking about Brady in that type of past tense, and he's still playing the game. But I've seen him make throws in practice. I've seen him make throws in games that are impressive, and he has the ability to do it. He doesn't have he's not throwing ducks out there. He doesn't have a noodle arm. I've heard all of those. We've heard them ad nauseum up here in New England for the past few years, and everybody that just can't wait for Tom to fall off that proverbial cliff. But I can tell you, he can still sling it. He's got the receivers to do it this year, and because of that, I think you're going to see Tom Brady throw the deep ball a lot. And when we opened the pod today, we talked about how in tune Tom is with what's being said about him and trolling and wanting to send a message and things of that nature. Tom Brady is well aware, perhaps better aware than anybody else, that people question his arm strength or his ability to lead this team on the field at the age of 43. He's going to be looking to go out there and say, you know what, I can do it. You want to see me throw the deep ball? I'll throw it. And one thing I've learned over the years, I don't bet against Tom Brady. If somebody says he can't do something, Tom's going to prove that he can, and he's going to prove that he can do it as well as even better than anybody else.
Is there a world, Mike? This is the last one for me, but is there a world, considering this COVID shit, right? Fucking sucks for everybody. But is there a world that Brady plays past these 2 years, or is that not even a possibility? You've covered
last year. That's a good question. That's a really good question. Last year at this time, I would have said no. I would have said 45 and Tom is capped, and that's pretty much it. But he looks motivated. He looks as good a shape as I've seen him. He looks as strong as I've seen him. And I think Tom is going to be one of those guys that's going to play as long as he feels he can contribute at a high level on a football field. If he feels that that's at age 46, then he's going to do it. If he thinks that he's reached his plateau, then I think he probably will, call it quits. I don't see Tom playing beyond a certain point just to play for a certain point. I think 45 is that magic number he wanted to reach, but it wouldn't surprise me to see him play past that. I would probably say these 2 years in Tampa Bay will be his swan song. That's just my feeling. I don't see him playing beyond that, but it wouldn't shock me if he decided to, especially if he's still playing at a high level.
Well, it's not so much to reach the point. I guess I should have phrased it differently, and maybe you would agree. But like year 2, because this year's gonna be funny, it'll be asterisk. But year 2, we get to the Super Bowl, we lose the way the Seahawks lost to the Patriots. They don't run the ball. I mean, it's like right there. He comes back for 46.
Honestly, of all things being equal, if he feels he can do the job, yeah, I would say he'd do that. But then again, I never thought that Tom would leave New England on a pick 6 that ended the game against Tennessee, especially against a former teammate like Logan Ryan. So it really depends on what's in Tom's head, what's in his heart, and what he feels is the right thing to do. I think once he reaches that point, he'll be able to look at himself in the mirror and say, I've done everything I needed to do. I can walk away, even if it's on a sour note. But if he feels he can still contribute and he still feels that he can compete at a high level, there's no way he's walking off the field with a bitter taste like that in his mouth, knowing that he's that close to being able to lead this team to a championship. I think that's his ultimate goal, and it would really surprise me if he didn't do that in Tampa Bay.
Well, that's what he said in that most recent press conference that the Tampa Bay media and some of the national media got to hear him on, and was, I'm here to give them the best I can possibly give them and compete for a championship. And it's like, yeah, that's what's expected. It's Tom Brady. And over the last 11, 12 years, his worst season in New England was what you'd consider our best here. Actually, better than our best here. I think our best was 10 wins under Raheem Morris, and I don't even think that was 10 years ago. I think it was beyond that. So, Tom, we all know what Tom brings. We get that. And again, thank you, Mike, for joining us and giving us even more insight and helping us kind of understand what Tom may or doesn't, may or may not meant, depending on what he says and his actions and things like that. And I'll kind of give you the floor here just to, pimp what you do for Locked On and all that good stuff.
Well, gentlemen, first of all, thank you. I appreciate the hospitality having me on. I do my best to speak from my experiences covering Tom. Obviously, Tom's going to do his talking on the field. So, folks, don't take it from me. Take it from what you see. Use your eyes. Use your common sense. Tampa Bay fans are going to be enamored with Tom as New England fans continue to be. So, guys are in for a fun couple of years down in Tampa. I envy you, but it's going to be a hell of a ride. As for me, you can catch me each and every day on the Locked On Podcast Network, Locked On Patriots. Right now, we're doing extensive coverage of training camp, obviously the arrival of Cam Newton, the competition with Jarrett Stidham, and Bill Belichick trying to bring this team back from the Brady-Belichick era, which was so important. So each and every day it's available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, all the major areas wherever you get your podcasts, download it. And again, folks, I do appreciate you guys having me on, and thank you. Always love coming on to talk Tom Brady.
Much respect, Mike. You guys on the Locked On Network are insane people. You guys know that, right? Doing a podcast every single day. That I don't know how you do it. Our local Locked On guys are amazing. Yarcho and Harrison, and I'm sure you've been on with them before, but appreciate it, man.
David
I love
and
having
James
you
are
on.
great friends. Yep. No, David and James are great friends. They put on a hell of a show.
By the way, Mike, that's how you pimp stuff, bro. Sammer, take notes, bro. You heard that?
Take notes, man.
It was.
Take notes,
He's a
Sammer.
pro. He does it every day. I do it once a week.
I mean, listen, Stank is a fan of hip hop and making music. The delivery was on point.
One take. We call him One Take Mike.
One take, Mike. Wow. How do you have a nickname for him? You've only hung out with him 2 times.
Bro, that's how good I am, bro. I know people.
Boys. He likes Buffalo.
I know if they're good or bad.
Likes
I'm like
Buffalo.
Santa Claus.
Bro, we're boys.
Yeah, we didn't touch on this a little bit, Mike, but I'll leave you with this. You know, there's something that we can't wait to watch, and that's the dynamic between the alpha males in our locker room, and that's Matt Gay and now Tom Brady. So, you know, you mentioned a lot of these guys and how Tom's coming in and he's the vet, and, you know, that's more important than anything else that we've talked about, is that how will Tom introduce himself to Hall of Famer Matt Gay, and how will that locker room dynamic work out? Will it affect the team negatively, or will they join forces and work towards a championship? We'll see.
The goal is the championship, guys. I'm
Absolutely.
willing to venture to guess that both those guys will do whatever it takes to win, and I know Tom will do it. We'll see what comes down the pike.
Oh, Matt will too. Matt's a Hall of Famer, of course. So anyway, thanks for hanging out, Mike. Go Bucs.
Go Bucs. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Gentlemen, thank you. Much appreciated.